So I'll present today part of my PhD project. It's morphology-based treatment for Hebrew-speaking patients with aphasia. Collaboration with many people, but supervised by Professor Tali Dikan, who's here, and Dr. Michal Yoram. So the agenda for the talk today, briefly I go over this slide. So a brief overview of the agenda for the current talk. We'll go briefly about background of aphasia, and then the treatment that we developed for the current study, the methods, the findings, and some conclusions. What is aphasia? It's an acquired language disorder that typically follows left hemisphere damage to temporal, parietal, and frontal regions. Here you can see, for example, one of our participants that has damage in the left hemisphere, very serious one following stroke, and it is accompanied with aphasia. There are different types of aphasia that are defined by the degree to which the language functions, such as speech production, speech comprehension, reading, and writing, are impaired. But anomia, which is a deficit in lexical retrieval, so the ability to find words, is the most frequent and persistent symptom of aphasia. Now, lexical retrieval is a very central process in language, right? It's the process where we have a concept in our mind and we transform it into a spoken word. So we use language every day, and patients with aphasia are struggling usually to find the right words, and it impairs their ability to express their feelings, their ideas, their needs, to be engaged in social interactions, social conversations, etc. I would like to give you a quick example of one of my participants that has an aphasia. Of course, I have her permission, but I will cover her face for that video. And she's trying to name the picture, the word cherry. She sees the picture and she tried to find the word cherry in Hebrew. Well, usually two together. That's the name of it.
בצפון יש הרבה, אני חושבת, איך קוראים לזה? לא אצליח להגיד.
But what's the name of it? I won't be able to say.
קטן וגדול, עכשיו יש את זה, בעונה הזאת יש, איך קוראים לה? איך קוראים לזה? עדשים, מה? עדשים, הפגעתי.
So you can see she struggled to name the type of word. She had the idea of what it is. She knows the semantic features of this word, yet she can't retrieve it. And you can imagine yourself trying, for sometimes you're trying to recall somebody's name and you can't retrieve the name. And it drives you crazy. Like you're stuck in your mind trying to figure out what's the name, and you can't let it go until you find the right word. So for patients with aphasia, this is the reality every day. There are treatments for anomia, mainly semantic and phonological treatments that are based on highly influential models of lexical retrieval. So semantic treatments usually focus on semantic features of words, such as the use of it, where it is located, what are we doing with it, etc. Whereas phonological treatment usually focus on the sounds of the word, so the initial phoneme, the syllable, number of syllables, rhyming, etc. But there are no morphology-based naming treatments. And in English literature, and we think this might be ascribed to the fact that there is an extreme bias towards English in the aphasia literature. Now, what's the current situation in Hebrew? So we don't have any morphology-based naming treatment studies, but worse than that, we don't have any naming treatment studies at all in Hebrew. So even studies that use some adjustment from treatment in other languages, but there is no protocol that translated a treatment and control for all the factors and found some treatments based on other language or in Hebrew efficient. And why morphology? With us, there are so many things in language. So morphology, specifically in Hebrew, it's a Semitic language with very rich morphology. And most of the words in Hebrew are composed of root of three phonemes, sounds, letters, and a template, where the root template and the root morpheme are intertwined together to form the words. So this is a nonlinear morphology. There are some linear morphology as well. The root in Hebrew carries the core meaning of the words, and it has a very important role in lexical retrieval in Hebrew speakers. Hebrew-speaking individuals are very sensitive to the root morpheme. So we have many studies of the root morpheme in Hebrew. For example, priming effects that were found where a root was a prime. It facilitated lexical retrieval, lexical judgment tasks. And sensitivity to the root morpheme is found already at the age of 3. Children are able to extract correctly the root from bimorphemic or multimorphemic words that are nonlinear, and they are able still to extract the root, there's 3 phonemes of the root, and build new words based on the root. There are also influence of the root in lexical decision tasks, and as well as evidence for neural root processing in adults, speaking Hebrew speaking adults, in the frontal regions of middle frontal gyrus, inferior frontal gyrus, as well as posterior regions in the inferior parietal lobule in the left hemisphere. So we thought this might be a good idea to take the root and take participants with aphasia, teach them about the root, make them more aware of the root morpheme and the lexical relations between words sharing the same root, and facilitate naming. So we wanted to develop morphology-based or root-based naming for treatment for patients with aphasia, to explore what's the treatment effects of on naming, and to explore what's the neural correlates underlying such treatment. How the treatment that we developed, especially for the current study, looked like. So the treatment had 3 steps. Let's go quickly over the 3 of them that they were used in all the sessions for each item that was treated. The first one was to increase morphological awareness of participants. So explicitly explaining to participants that when words are sharing the same root, they are actually semantically, phonologically, and orthographically related to each other just because they share the same root. And we explicitly taught them to be aware of it, to listen carefully to the words. So for example, here you can see the Hebrew word mikledet and related verbs maklidim, laklid. So you can probably hear the similarities. In English, that would be a keyboard, and to type, typing, etc. In the next step, participants were required to identify morphological relations between words that share the same root. So they saw 4 pictures on the screen, and they hear a word, and they had to choose which of the pictures has the same root as the word they heard for. In this example, I'll say it in Hebrew for those of you who talk Hebrew. לאיזו מילה או מילים יש את אותו שורש כמו המילה לחבוש? Obviously, the incorrect responses would be hat and kippah, yarmulke, because we say in Hebrew לחבוש כובע, לחבוש kippah, but these are not the correct answer. The correct response in this case is a band, לחבוש תחבושת. In the third step, so participants had to name the target word with a morphological cue. The morphological cue was embedded within a sentence. So it was a sentence completion task. And by completing the sentence with the cue to the target word, they actually named the target word. So in this case, let's go back to the mikledet in Hebrew. The SLP said the sentence, התלמיד מקליד ב, and they had to complete mikledet. So the student types on a keyboard. And probably you could be able to track that within the sentence, the cueing sentence, there was a verb that is related to the target word by the same roots. So we had 12 participants with aphasia following left hemisphere stroke, single stroke. They all had aphasia and significant anomia, which was determined by naming scores less than 70% on naming tests. And aphasia type was not an inclusion criterion because it's more an exploratory study. We wanted to see whether the treatment helps participants with aphasia, more proof of concept. There were obviously more inclusion criteria, which I will not go over currently, but one of them was that patients were not engaged in any other formal treatment during the course of the study. So first we had some screening assessments of cognitive and linguistic tests, and then we had naming tests, so 3 consecutive sessions of naming tests of bimorphemic words, meaning words that has root. Then we chose treated and untreated items for each participant, and the lists were balanced for length, frequency, and success in naming. And each participant underwent 20 treatment sessions, about 45 minutes each, twice a week. And for the tool list, of course, only the treated items were treated during the treatment. Following the treatment, again, they underwent 3 naming tests in 3 consecutive sessions of the treated and untreated items. And there was a follow-up assessment of the naming test 10 weeks from the termination of the treatment. Now, 4 of the participants were also scanned in fMRI before and after the treatment, performing a naming test within the scanner that we will talk about later in this talk. So the results, let's take a look first at the behavioral results. What we see here, the y-axis is accuracy in percentage of naming, and the x-axis is the timeline. So pre-treatment is the three naming test average performances in the pre-treatment, average of the three tests in the post-treatment, and in a follow-up. And this is the graph for treated items. So 11 out of 12 participants improved significantly in naming treated items following the treatment, so improving from pre to post-treatment. And all of the 11 maintained significantly these gains at least 10 weeks following the treatment. So when comparing pre to follow-up, it was still significant improvement. This is a very good result. Now let's take a look what happened in the untreated items. Here we can see the same graph on the y and x-axis, timeline and accuracy. And you can see 3 participants are marked by stars, so 6 participants improved significantly in naming untreated items from pre to post-treatment, and 3 of them maintained these gains from pre to follow-up assessment. So this is generalization to untreated items by morphemic words with the same morphological structures of root, but participants did not meet these words during the treatment. We were very happy with the results because many studies of naming treatments in aphasia found improvement in naming of treated items, but generalization to new items is less found in most of the studies. Okay, so fMRI results. So getting to the fMRI part, as I've said before, 4 participants were scanned in fMRI before and after the treatment. And in the scanner, they performed the same naming task of bimorphemic words. So we had condition of treated items, condition of untreated items for each individual, and a baseline condition of scrambled pictures of the same pictures. Unfortunately, we had to exclude 1 participant due to very low accuracy. And this is the participants that you saw before who did not improve at all in the treated items. The imaging results show as expected there was different patterns of changes in activation across different individuals with aphasia. And we're not surprised, right? But in all participants, we saw increased activation following the treatment. And this was true for treated and untreated items. And there was no evidence for the opposite trend. Furthermore, the increased activation was more in the right hemisphere and not in the left hemisphere. Okay, so let's take a look at it. Here we see the treated items and we see the brain from a lateral view. Now in the left video, we can see regions where activation was greater in post-treatment. In the right hemisphere, we see regions where activation was greater in the pre-treatment, before the treatment. And this is a subject level analysis. So the activation of different subjects was just overlaid one on top of the other, and each one of them is depicted by a different color. And we'll take a tour around the brain to see the results. So we can see that there was more activation in the left video, in the post-treatment compared to pre-treatment, and there was more activation in the right hemisphere compared to the left hemisphere. And interestingly, as I've said before, we find these same results for untreated items. So again, different colors for different subjects. You can see in the left that there is activation post-treatment, and actually pre-treatment for the same contrast, the opposite contrast, there is no activation at all, and the activation is more in the right hemisphere and not in the left hemisphere. So let's take a look here again. Yes. Now, if we take a look at the contrast of treated items only, as I've shown before, across the brain, so again, participants overlaid maps, we can see in the axial slice here the shared activation across participants. But if we look at the render brain from lateral view here, we can see that 2 language regions were shared, showed increased in activation across participants. So the IPL, inferior parietal lobe, anterior gyrus, and supramarginal gyrus, as well as medial frontal gyrus, that was activated more following the treatment for 2 participants. And these are language regions that, interestingly, as I've mentioned before, were found in Hebrew-speaking adults, healthy adults, be involved in root processing in Hebrew. So the left hemisphere, IPL, and medial frontal gyrus were found to be engaged in root processing and morphology of Hebrew. So maybe the activation in the right hemisphere homologous regions reflects compensation, given that there is a lesion in the left hemisphere. So participants are recruiting the homologous regions to perform tasks that demands morphological processing. Another region that was more activated following the treatment in all participants was bilateral precuneus. Now, this is not a language region, but it's more domain general region, part of the default mode network, and it might be related to attention. So maybe participants were more attentive and engaged in the task following the treatment. And this is a finding that was found before in different naming studies of patients with aphasia. So to conclude, we found the treatment to be very efficient. We saw improvement and generalization in our participants. And we can think of different mechanisms that are involved or underlie this treatment. That can be decomposition of the root, that may be supported partially by the brain results. That can be self-cueing and spreading activation, which I don't have the time to get into it. But we want to think that there is importance of taking the characteristic of the language you're using as a treatment and use them while you're treating, not just translating treatments from other languages with different structures. And as I've said, we saw evidence for increased activation following the treatment. There might be compensation for language processing of the root, as well as increased attention in more domain general regions. I'll finish with that. Thank you.
2 minutes with questions. Next.
So that's a very interesting talk. I wanted to ask, first maybe I missed it, what was the task they performed in the MRI?
So it's the same naming task of bimorphemic words with root. They just saw the pictures and they have to name it.
Okay, so, and second question, did you find any similarities between the patients that did benefit from the treatment and the ones that didn't, regarding pattern of errors or the type of aphasia they had?
Yeah, so you mean in the fMRI or generally in behavioral results? So most of the participants did improve. There was only one participant behaviorally did not improve. She had conductive aphasia, I'm familiar with. So we think we can't conclude for one patient with conductive aphasia whether the treatment is not the good thing for her. But we think it might be that she struggled to repeat the words or sentences like completion sentences that requires like rehearsal. So, and this is very tough for patients with conductive aphasia. In terms of the brain, her activation was very different from the other participants. And in some of the conditions, she had more activation pre-treatment than post-treatment, but due to her very low accuracy. So the one with low accuracy in the fMRI was the one who did not improve in the study. So we had to exclude it from the fMRI. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you can search for phonology results after morphological treatment. I found it in little normal kids, and morphology treatment can do good things for morphology and for phonology for Arabic speakers, but I think it will be good also for Hebrew speakers.
I can relate to that. So we have also very few patients with semantic impairment. Most of them were phonological impairment, so we do look at the kind of impairment they had. But the beginning, like when we have only the